Good morning, podcasters. Let's talk about a thing that I don't want to talk about: podcasting during a recession, with a particular focus on podcast advertising. Happy February, y'all. I'm Fuzz Martin, host of Good Morning Podcasters. Thank you for making January a great month for the show. I had more than 1,000 unique listeners during January, according to OP3 stats. That's up from 452 in December. I've made my OP3 stats public. You can go to gmp.fm/stats if you'd like to take a look. gmp.fm/stats. Look, I don't want to be a wet blanket, but I think it's important to talk about what the world of podcasting may look like if we end up in a recession. I'm going to quote a Forbes article called "Are We in a Recession Yet?" dated January 27th, 2023 by Taylor Tepper. According to a general definition of recession, 2 consecutive quarters of negative gross domestic product, GDP, the U.S. entered into recession in the summer of 2022. This also from the article. The organization that defines U.S. business cycles, the National Bureau of Economic Research, NBER, takes a different view. According to NBER's definition of recession, a significant decline in economic activity that is spread across the economy and that lasts more than a few months. According to that, we are not in a recession in the summer of 2022, end quote. Now, it goes on to say that through the rest of 2022, we moved further away from the prospect of recession. Nevertheless, it could still happen. So we as business owners or hobbyists who make podcasting money on the side need to stay vigilant and be prepared for what might happen if we do indeed go into a recession or even come close to it. As an owner of a marketing agency that works with a number of large publicly traded companies as well as medium-sized businesses, I can tell you from experience that advertising and marketing are the first budgets to get cut when the economy takes a downturn. We're essentially the proverbial canary in the coal mine. Now, businesses that know what's up continue to advertise through the hard times, especially knowing that their competition might be cutting back, giving them an opportunity to shine. One of our clients is run by retired Marines. They actually increased their ad spending during the last recession, and they said the reason for that was because you're supposed to, and I quote, "run headfirst into a firefight. If you turn your back, you get shot in the ass." I always love that quote. That's, of course, somewhat atypical of most business philosophies. From a macro perspective, large corporations will typically lay off staff and cut back on soft expenses, which includes marketing and advertising, when they need to make their numbers look as good as possible to investors. So what can we expect as podcasters if we go into recession? Well, we will likely see advertisers cut back on spending, leading to a decrease in demand for advertising on podcasts. You as a podcaster may expect to see fewer advertising opportunities, lower rates for ads, and a very competitive market of those competing for those limited ad bucks that are still available. Additionally, sponsors may prioritize more established or higher performing podcasts, leaving some smaller or newer podcasts with fewer options. Brands that continue advertising may be more interested in your show's performance and metrics than they historically have been, and they will likely take a more focused look at their cost per acquisition, their CPA, for each show that they advertise on. And from your side, that might mean spending more time proving your show's worth to your brand partners than you're typically used to. Just as a small example, last week, I saw posts from a couple of podcasters who had their partnerships with a popular food delivery service canceled, and correlation is not causation. So this situation may be completely unrelated, but it's a good example of what might happen. So this brand might be dropping some of its podcast advertising partners due to a drop in demand and a huge increase in food costs. They didn't drop all podcasts, but they certainly did drop some of their mid-tier partners. If the economy does go south, we'll likely see more of that from bigger advertisers. Some of the smaller advertisers might even go away altogether. So you're going to want to get creative and flexible with things if they go in that direction. if this happens, and I'm definitely not saying right now is the time to pull the trigger on that, but if it happens and you are on multiple channels, for instance, you have a podcast, a YouTube channel, a newsletter, if that's the case, at that time, you may want to consider offering all of those as a bundle to your ad sponsors instead of a per platform agreement. And some of you might be doing that already right now, but in the case of a recession, you're going to want to try to make things look as good as possible in order to stay on the roster, if you will. The good news is that podcast advertising is still very affordable. Fans are typically very loyal, and podcast advertising is typically pretty easy to track through downloads, promo codes, unique links, those kinds of things. That said, it's a lot easier for a brand to bail on a marketing budget with a number of podcasters or podcast networks than it is for them to cancel a national network ad buy. I've been there and we've had to do that in the past, and it is difficult. Podcasts are also a lot less easy to track than some other digital platforms like search and social ads. But I don't want to be all doom and gloom. That doesn't mean that it's all going away if there's a recession. You just need to be on the lookout. So if you start hearing more about big brands canceling their podcast ad plans, if you start to hear no from partners who typically tell you yes, or if, we enter into a full-blown recession, you'll know it, then you're going to need to be more flexible, prepared to offer more information about your audience and your show's performance, and look for creative opportunities in the market to connect brands with your audience. And hopefully, none of that happens. But if it does happen, I hope you'll be prepared. Thanks for listening to today's awesome, fun, uplifting episode of Good Morning Podcasters. If you have any questions for me, you can email a fuzz@goodmorningpod.com. That is FUZZ @goodmorningpod.com. Follow the show on your favorite podcast player. I see a lot of you listen on Overcast. Thank you. New episodes are available Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And with that, I'll talk to you again on Friday, right here on Good Morning Podcasters.